hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Dr. Tina Armstrong, and just a few months ago, I would have welcomed you as a faculty member, but I have since retired, but it is good to be back home in Travis Auditorium. Haven't these lectures been fabulous, the things that we have been learning? Well, today we're going to continue on that line together in this workshop. Typically, just heads up, when I do this workshop, I'm doing it for a room full of Black women. Now, look around the room right now. This is not a room full of Black women. They're potentially online, I don't see it. But nevertheless, the material that we are going to cover today, though it was curated and though it was researched specifically for that group of people, it is applicable. It will be tools and strategies that you all can utilize in order to manage the stressors that we experience. Let me ask this question. Okay, let me get all my tech right. All right. So we're going to be talking about chronic stressors as well as a pathway on how to move through them. But before we go any further, they're going to introduce themselves when they come up, but I have two very special guests in the room with me today. That is my former research fellows, Mr. Jordan Rollerson and Miss Dinisha Mingo. So they're still students here, they're still rocking it, and I'm so glad that they're here with me today as they were with me as we developed this work together. So, my goal for you today, my hope is that in this session, you'll really learn some holistic tools, not just to reduce stress, we want to do that, but when we reduce something, we also have to think about ways to enhance something else. And so what is it that I would like you all to enhance? Is your well-being, your shalom. Our spirituality is more than just the spiritual component of ourselves, as you've been hearing, right? Our spirituality encompasses our psychological health. It encompasses our emotional health. It encompasses our physical health. Imagine that. That is part of our spirituality. So we're going to be talking about some tools on how to utilize that today. So all of you, my goal for you or my hope for you is that when we start going through the sequence of these 6 principles that we're going to cover, that you find one activity that would resonate with you as something that you will commit to trying out. You don't have to try it out for a long period of time, but I want you to at least experiment with that tool and see how it impacts your well-being as well as decreasing your stress. Sound like an okay thing? Yeah. Raise your hand if you're in with me. All right, folks online, put a comment in the chat, thumbs up, something. Let us know that you are ready to try this out. All right, so yesterday, Dr. Strawn and Dr. Fort did a wonderful job when they first started about traditioning themselves, letting the audience know where they're coming from, how the lecture or the presentation that they're going to be doing is really informed by who they are. Well, I'm going to tradition myself in a similar way, and I'm going to tell you a story. And hopefully in this story, you will see yourself. And part of my tradition is I'm from a historical Black church denomination. And with that, we do a little bit of call and response. So when I say something, the expectation is that y'all gonna say something back to me. All right, so here we go. Let's try it real quick. Good morning. Good morning. All right, y'all, did y'all go to my church too? Love it. Online, I know I can't hear your voices, but type hello, good morning in the chat. All right, so how many of you in the room have ever been on a path? It was clear, you knew where you were headed to. And out of nowhere, something blindsided you and completely took you off track. If that's an experience you had, be it relational, vocational, emotional, spiritual, raise your hand. All right, real quick, everybody look around. Oop, keep your hand up. Everybody look around the room. Now, this is a workshop, so that is some interaction. That is a call and response. Thank you. You can put your hands down. Second question. How many of you have ever been in a position to be a caregiver? That could be caring for your team, that could be caring for an elder in your life, a child in your life, but you were in some type of caring position that you found yourself in. And at the same time, you were doing things that you were not, because you were so busy in that caregiving capacity, you weren't caring for yourself in the ways that you need to be. All right, if that is you, a part of your story, raise your hand high this time. Raise it high. Okay, real quick, look around the room. Look around the room. This is something that almost everybody has raised their hand on. So because of that, hopefully today's message would resonate really clearly to you. In both of those situations, that's my story. A story of a person who had a prestigious job, a family, wonderful family, had children later in life, just doing a lot of wonderful things. And just like that, I won't do it for the mic's sake, but just like that, out of nowhere, I was blindsided, thrown a curveball regarding my health that caused me to take some drastic decisions really quickly. Now, I do see God's hand in it. I see his providence. I see how he's working things for my good and for his greater good. But nevertheless, there's ways in which chronic stress impacts our lives and our bodies, and we need to be aware of it. And even as a researcher here at Fuller for 8 years plus, and at my former institution, I studied wellness and resilience stress. I studied post-traumatic stress. I had a research lab on Black women's spirituality and health, where we looked at chronic stress. And here I am as a Black woman who didn't see my own vulnerabilities, because there's one thing about knowing versus doing. And that's why today we are going to be talking about living rooted. Not just knowing about the rooted system, but how to live rooted. So living rooted, and I'm all confused. All right, here we go. I'm getting the tech together. So living rooted is a 6-step process that we've researched as a team on strategies on how to combat chronic stress as well as to enhance well-being. The first step is to reset. So in my story, the reset looks like accepting my vulnerabilities. It looks like being aware of where I am right now, knowing that even though I have a bunch of knowledge and information, there's ways in which I, as an individual, need to incorporate that knowledge and information into living daily. The next step is to observe. We heard about this today. So when we think about observation, it's not just an external observation, although that's part of it, of what's happening, but it's also an internal observation about what's happening inside of us. It's about an opportunity to be intentional about grieving losses, intentional about showing up where I am, where my feet are planted today, and recognizing those things. It's also about orienting ourselves. Last year, I think it was, where we had the wonderful lecture. Was last year gratitude? 2 years ago? Okay, it all mashes together. But we talked about orienting to gratitude. And in our work, we talk about orienting to gratitude, self-compassion. How many of us can beat ourselves up because of where we are? And that only compounds the stressors. And we also talk about orienting to joy. And next, we talk about the gift of being able to communicate, to talk, to having a community. This work is not to be done in isolation, because when we do it in isolation, what happens is we stay up here. Dr. Rojas Flores was talking about the work that she was doing in Colombia. And the ministry workers decided, like, hey, we're not going to take this manual and just do it by ourselves. We have to do it in the context of community. The same is true for this work. Also, we have exercise. Now, I used to do CrossFit, not doing it right now, but I used to do CrossFit. And I'm not talking about the intense exercise. I'm simply talking about getting your body in motion, moving. Research upon research study has talked about the importance of moving, not only for our cognitive capacity and emotional capacity, but physiologically what that does with the cortisol that some of us store in our bodies because of the fight or flight response, stress response. So we're going to talk to you all a little bit about that. And then finally, we will end with disrupting. This is a big one. Disrupting the negative thoughts that we have, disrupting those limiting beliefs, disrupting the ways in which we have internalized messages that impact the way we show up in the world. So after we take you through all of these steps, we are going to end with questions and answers. Now, the thing is, just so you know, typically we do this in a full day, and now it's a 2-day workshop. So what we're going to do in this particular time is just simply expose you to the concepts, give you a few of the skills, let you practice them very briefly, just so that you are aware of there's some magnificent tools that we have and that are underutilized that we can begin to change the ways in which our physiological sides, our emotional sides, our mental and spiritual sides can come into collaboration with each other so that we can live more holistically.
It's so wonderful to be here. I am Dinisha Mingo. As Dr. Armstrong mentioned, I was her previous fellow. I'm now working with Dr. Abernathy, third-year PhD student in the clinical psych program. Hey! As well as doing my master's in divinity. And I'm just so excited and thankful to be here with you today. So for the sake of time, we are just going to hop right in it. We have had the opportunity to work with Dr. Armstrong on this research for the last couple of years, and it is so profound. And at the Sisters Flourishing Retreat that we did last year, it was just eye-opening for me, even as a Black woman, to see how important this space is for all of us, but specifically that audience. And so just thrilled to be able to bring it to here with you today. So the first module in Living Rooted is reset. Resetting is taking moments to breathe, to allow ourselves to really just have a fresh start. The beautiful thing about resetting is you can do this every morning. You can do it right before you go into work. You can do it after you've had a tough moment or argument. You can reset at any specific time and specifically with these tools. And it's critical for our minds and our bodies to have those moments. And it's not always just in response to something negative. It's allowing ourselves sometimes to just transition from one space to the other. And that's particularly important in our busy lives. So we want to reset and give ourselves a moment to ground and start fresh. So one of the ways that we reset is through relaxation. And it's critically important because it gives us moments, right, just to take that break, like I said, through all these different transitions. When we practice this regularly, however, it teaches our mind and our body that whatever relaxation or grounding tools we use, our bodies respond to them more quickly. So if any of us have ever felt anxious or maybe had a panic attack or just been really upset and found it difficult to actually ground ourselves in those moments, when we begin to practice these regularly, then when we have those moments that we need to draw on these tools, our mind and our body knows, just like going to sleep, having a routine. When I do this, I can reset, and it allows you to self-calm a lot more quickly. But it also puts you at a space where you're not as easily triggered and stressed because it's just become a part of your life. And it is scientifically backed. Sorry. Let's see. And so I've already mentioned breathing. You can do 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 methods. There's so many things on Google. You can also come to our retreat to find about all the different ways that you can ground yourself in nature. And what I love about resetting and particularly breathing is that you can do it anywhere. You can do it sitting at your desk. You can do it at work. You can do it in the bed. If you feel like you need to be a little bit more expressive in your breathing, you can go to the bathroom. You can do it sitting. You can do it standing. You can do it where no one knows. So it is a tool that we all can use at any time to really allow ourselves those moments to really reset and ground. It not only tells your mind and your body what we should be doing, but when you are engaging these grounding exercises, you can also influence the atmosphere and environment around you. So when we're breathing, for example, the biggest thing is, especially for a lot of us who experience anxiety, one of the biggest and most helpful coping skills is to breathe and engage grounding, because when you get out of your head, you get into your body. Or one of the best ways to get out of your head is to get into your body, but it puts your body and your mind on one accord. It's taking you from that fight or flight or freeze, that stress response, which many of us are constantly operating in this without even knowing, right? You wake up in the morning, you're getting ready for work, you're grabbing your keys, you're taking your kids to school, you're thinking about what assignment or task you have to do. So we're often operating a little bit more in that stress response or our sympathetic nervous system than we really are aware of. So when we reset, it allows us to move from that sympathetic, that fight or flight or freeze, to our parasympathetic nervous system, which is rest and digest. If you think about that, resting your mind, digesting internally, mind and body again becoming on one accord. So these are some of the ways that you can practice resetting through belly breathing, affirmation breathing, humming breath. I mentioned earlier 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method where you really allow yourself to check into your senses. 5 things you can see, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can feel, 2 things you can touch, and 1 thing or smell, and 1 thing you can taste. But today we are going to practice a different breathing exercise. But I just want to share a quick story with you about how critical this is. One day I was driving in the car with my mom, and we were having a disagreement. And it got a little heated. I was upset, she was upset, and she started having a panic attack. And in that moment, I had 2 choices. First of all, I was a little upset, like, you are not getting out of this by having a panic attack. But actually, being a mental health professional for many years prior to coming into this program, I knew how critical breathing is. And for any of us who are psychologists or clinicians in any form, you know our families and our close ones hate for us to use our skills and tips. They don't want to hear any of that. I'm not your client. But on that day, and when she was having the panic attack, I immediately went into breathing. And it took about probably 2 minutes because she wasn't able to do it, but I controlled that temperature. I controlled the room. I kept breathing. And eventually, me doing that, she was able to catch my rhythm and calm. And I remember her looking over at me and was like, wow, you're good. And so when you remember that slide earlier where it said these things are really simple, but they are powerful. And sometimes we think like, oh, breathing, everyone talks about it, but it really is that powerful. It doesn't take much to reset. So I mentioned you can do this anywhere. One of the best ways to effectively reset is to make sure your feet are flat. You want to kind of posture yourself, sit up straight if you can. Drop your shoulders. Notice and kind of drop your jaw. And then the biggest things you may hear about is that big belly breath. And so when I lead you into this, I want you to take a big inhale through your nose. Don't do it yet, just telling you how. Big breath through your nose. And then we want to hold it for a couple of seconds and then slowly exhale as if you're blowing out a candle or blowing into a straw. And that's how you begin to regulate, okay? So inhale through your nose. We're going to hold for a couple of seconds. And then for maybe about 4 seconds, try to blow out that candle or through a straw. Inhale in. Let's hold it for 2, 1, and slowly exhale. Take another deep breath in. Hold 2, 1, and exhale. I don't want to make you too tired, so let's just do one more in. Slowly exhale. The cool thing is the breathing is one of the grounding bases of it, but you can do something as simple as a breath prayer with that. And it's just taking simple verses that may speak to your heart and your mind. And you might breathe in, peace, hold 2, and exhale. Be still. Or you can even use the breath prayer here. So my offering to you and request is that you pick one of these items on this slide. It can be that we just practiced, or it can be any of those listed, the belly breathing, the affirmation, the humming, and commit to doing just one daily for yourself so that you can reset and be well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dinisha. So the first tool that you all have under your tool belt is breathing. Yes, it is breathing, but it starts with the R. Reset, yes. And we can do that any point, anytime, as Dinisha said, multiple times a day. So our next tool is observe. So observation is really an opportunity for us to become aware of what's happening to us internally as well as aware of what's happening for us externally. It's about being curious without judgment. Being aware allows us to be intentional. Have you ever been in a situation where something happened and you were just triggered? You just responded. Sometimes when those things happen is we're not always beforehand aware of how these situations and circumstances are going to impact us. Now it's way more complicated than that, obviously, especially when we start moving from just chronic stress to, say, PTSD or other types of big T traumas. But as we're talking about specifically chronic stress, the more that we can be aware of our own responses and reactions and how things impact us, the more aware we can be in terms of the responses that we want to have. So there is a difference between reacting and responding. Real quick, remember, I'm from the culture of call and response and asking questions. So what is reacting? Somebody really quick. What's reaction? What do you think is different between reacting and responding? Real quick.
Responding through emotion.
Okay, responding through emotion.
More automatic.
One is automatic. Which one is automatic? Reacting or responding? Yes, reacting is typically more automatic than responding. Anybody else? Any other thoughts? All right. So responding, definitely, you got the gist of it. Reacting is more of that automatic response. And in order for us to become more aware so that we can respond as opposed to staying in a reactive state, we have to observe what's going on and become aware of that. It's less of the impulse. How do we take the edge off the impulse? Great question. Glad you asked me. All right, so we get to make informed choices. And these informed choices really help us to grow. They really help us to change. And they really allow us to see situations for what they are. There's a lot of times where in the populations I typically work with, which is predominantly African-American, high-achieving professional women, when I'm working with them, one of the things we often see is we have not, as a group, been able to take the time needed to actually grieve and lament. And now this is largely with women of faith. And we talk about, well, is Psalms not in the Bible anywhere? Have we not seen all of the laments that are there? But because of life's demands, because of stressors, because of the cultural ideas and ideologies, there hasn't been that space to actually sit and observe and grieve. And so in observation, one of the wonderful tools that we get to do together when we are in community is we get to actually create a lament together. And so people are broken into different groups. And when they're in these groups, they not only share their part of the story, but they begin to recognize that there's a communal story, that they are not the only one, that there's other people who have experienced similar things to them that they're grieving about. And do you know how powerful that is to realize that you are not alone in this? That it didn't just happen to you because somehow you didn't make the best choice or you didn't do blah, 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 blah. You know, any one of those things. It's an opportunity to know yourself. That's what observation is all about, getting to know yourself. So how are we going to do that here in the room? There's a number of wonderful tools that we use, and probably one of the most simplest that we'll do in this room together today will be the body scan. But one of the ways is mindful walking, using 5 senses, walking in nature barefoot. So many different ways that you can experience this. But I'm going to invite you to an opportunity to do a body scan. So all the mental health folks in the house, you probably know this, but I ask you just to go along. The first thing that we always do is start with grounding. So as Dinisha said, we want to sit in a comfortable position. And by no means, if you want to participate, great. If you don't, that's fine. I'm just going to explain what we're going to do, and then we'll do it. So what I'm going to ask you to do is close your eyes, or if you keep them open, you're going to have a soft gaze. I'm going to ask you, we're going to practice the skill of observation by observing how our body is responding to stress and or tension. I'm going to ask you to do a scan starting with your feet. So you're going to use your mind's eye as if you're looking through your body like a scan, and you're starting at your feet and you're working your way all the way up to the top of your head. And you're going to notice, where are you holding tension? And I may say some other words. Where are you holding fatigue or tiredness? Or you may discover a different emotion or a different feeling or sensation that you are noticing. And I want you just to hold it. We're not going to do anything with it. We're not going to judge it. It's simply about practicing awareness. Similar to muscle memory, the more and more you do something, the more easier, as Dinisha said, you can return to that state. Where the more you practice observation and awareness, the more you can be in a board meeting, you can be in a class, you can be having a conversation where you begin to then become more attuned to how your body is responding so that you can respond versus react. Exactly. All right, so if you're going to join me on this journey, feel free to close your eyes or have a distant gaze as I walk you through it. We're going to just take a few cleansing breaths just to settle in. Just settling into our bodies. And I'm going to invite you to start at the balls of your feet, at your toes. Just working your way up, noticing any tension, any energy that you're holding. Working your way up at your own pace, or you can follow my voice, to your ankles, up through the Achilles heel, up, up, up. We're in your lower part of your legs, your shins, your calves, your knees. Working your way up to your quads, hamstrings, noticing, is there any tension that I'm carrying? And naming it, seeing if there's a name for that sensation or feeling that's coming up. Working your way up, we're about at the waist, the midsection, your chest, and we're gonna go back down the arms, all the way to the fingertips. And once we reach those fingertips, we're gonna walk back on up, 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 up to the shoulders, to the neck, to the chin, cheeks, nose, eyes, forehead, top of the head. And we're gonna notice, where is it that we held tension? Just noticing, just sitting with that sensation, sitting with that feeling, not moving away from it just yet. It might be uncomfortable, it may be a little awkward. You may not be sure if you're feeling what you're feeling, and it's okay, we're practicing. You're just sitting with it. And when you're ready, I ask that you would open your eyes. If your eyes were closed, open your eyes. And because we're 1 minute ahead of schedule, I'm gonna give you a bonus. So with your eyes open, if any of you felt a particular sensation, feeling somewhere in your body, phase 2 of this exercise is going to be to send your breath there. So imagine that your breath is like this heat-seeking radar. And when you blow it out through a straw, you're gonna imagine that you're sending it to that area. So if it's my shoulders tend to get tight. So I'm gonna imagine after I inhale, me sending my breath to that area. So I want you to try that. Send your breath to the area that you identified. Our breath is healing. Our breath begins the process. How? Because that bringing awareness to it can then allow change to occur. You're bringing awareness and your breath. And so after you've done that exercise, I invite you just to turn to your neighbor and just exchange stories about what did work, what didn't work, was it uncomfortable, what did you feel, just your experience. Just real quick, I want you to turn to your neighbor and share your experience. I wish I could hear them all, but I can't. All right, I know that was very, very fast. And I'm gonna jump back in. And maybe we have time for just 1 or 2 people. If there's anybody who is just passionately that wants to share their experience, be it, hey, that felt good, or be it, that just did not work for me. All of those things are welcome because there's always people for whom this just does not work. That's why we have a number of different activities. So anybody really quick want to share their experience? It can't be a little finger. It has to be big. I got to be able to see you. Yes.
I noticed that I have pain in my lower back, but I actually noticed it in my toes first because you asked me to start at the bottom. So it's been spreading in ways that I didn't know all day.
So what we just heard is this activity brought some awareness to where typically the pain is noted in the back region, but because of being intentional about starting with the feet, noticing like, wow, it's actually a little bit more, maybe not intense, but it spread to a place that I hadn't been aware of before. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And I think why I wanted to get some feedback is I want to remind you, as Dinisha said, these are simple tools. This is not rocket science, so to speak, that we're talking about. But the rocket science comes in doing it in community, and it comes in living it, not just knowing it. Right? So that's why we're doing this in this workshop. We are practicing these things because it's not just about knowing it. We're brilliant people in this room. But we're also brilliant people who likely have a number of illnesses, be it health challenges rather, because of the stressors that we live with, because we're not implementing these tools that we know. All right, so we have reset, and then we have observe, and now we're gonna go to orienting. So orienting is really about turning towards self-compassion, turning towards joy, and turning towards gratitude. We had a whole integration symposium. All the days, all the speakers, all the responses was all about gratitude. So any one of these concepts would be the whole integration symposium. I say that because I want you to know that there's research behind every single one of these. We're not going to dive into that today, but there are great people who are doing fantastic work about the importance of this. What we're going to be doing here today is how do we implement it? What can that look like in our day-to-day life? And why do we need to implement it? Because gratitude helps to change the tides in our lives. It really helps us to shift from disappointment and feeling overwhelmed by that disappointment to really noting, well, what are some anchors that I can hold on to, that I can see in my life that's helping to propel me forward? Gratitude and joy also helps us to recognize the power of perspective. When you're on an airplane, well, when you're taking off, right, you see the buildings at eye level. But when you're on an airplane and you're far above them, you look down and those great big skyscrapers look like little bitty Tonka toys, right? Really, really small. So how do we shift our perspective? We shift our perspective by orienting ourselves to joy, to self-compassion, and to gratitude. So there's a number of practices that we could do, but given where we just started, we're gonna work on today compassion holds. Has anybody heard of compassion holds? Slip your hand up real quick if you do. Yep, of course, my students, but yes, other people, yes, yes. Oh, good. Oh, people who went to the retreat, okay. Well, compassion holds, actually another one of our plenary speakers at one of our integration symposiums here at Fuller talked a lot about this in the Dr. Tama Bryant Davis. But one of the compassion holds that I absolutely like, there's 4. Why do we do compassion holds? Because whenever we experience stress and then we're hard on ourselves about experiencing those stressors, what does that do? That's like taking a soda in a bottle and shaking it up. And what's that gonna do when we open it? Everywhere. Compassion holds start with generating kindness towards ourselves. Our Heavenly Father is a compassionate God to us. And sometimes we do not allow ourselves to experience and to give ourselves that same level of compassion. So today I'm going to teach you 4 holds that you can do. And when I say holds, it's just 4 activities. But the first one is going to be what we call the butterfly hold. So it's like the old school where you just hug yourself. So if you can practice that with me, if you want to, you can try it. Just see that. And you can even switch hands on top. Sometimes one hand feels better than the other. Yeah, oh, I like it. You guys see already, our nervous systems know the importance of this. I see the people rocking and swaying. There's already something that happens for us when we engage in that. The next compassion hold, 2 hands here, hands over your heart. Oh, and I heard the just the tenderness, being tender and gentle to oneself. The next compassion hold is hand on heart, either one, right or left, whatever works for you, and hand on forehead. For all you intellectuals in the room, how does that feel? Yeah. And then hand on heart and hand on belly or abdomen. Rest and digest. Remember we were talking about that parasympathetic nervous system? These are all ways to help our systems calm, to help regulate. We talked a lot about yesterday regulating. So what I'm gonna ask you to do is I'm gonna walk you through another kind of breath meditation, but we're gonna do it while holding a compassion hold. And I want you just to pay attention to how is your body responding? And notice if anything happens and you're doing this and it's not feeling good, stop the practice. We want to do those things, especially when we're talking about self-compassion, that really help us to feel internally the gentleness and the kindness towards self. All right, sound okay? You guys still with me? There's a call and response. Yeah. Thank you. All right, so whatever your choice is, remember there's butterfly, hands over heart, hands on heart and head, hands on heart and abdomen. Whatever one works for you, I ask that if you're gonna participate that you choose one now. And sitting comfortably in your chair, I invite you simply to breathe. Breathing in, holding it at the top, and then slowly releasing it. And as you're breathing, I invite you to invite gentleness to the party. Invite self-kindness. What does it feel like to be gentle to oneself? To hold compassion and tenderness towards self? What are you feeling in your body as you sit in a posture of self-compassion? And as you hold that pose, I invite you to allow it to begin to stir. And any nook or cranny within you that needs a little extra tenderness today, I invite you to allow it to flow there. And again, we're practicing. There's no judgment. It may feel awkward, yes. It may be new or it may be familiar, but it's an opportunity to practice. And after sitting in self-compassion, I want you to thank yourself for showing up today, for showing up here. Thank yourself for doing this activity, for trying this new thing, if it is new, or for re-engaging in a practice, if it's a familiar practice to you. And after thanking yourself, I want you to open your eyes and return to the room. And again, I would like you to turn to your neighbor and just share what's happening for you in this moment as you sit with self-compassion after doing this activity. 1 minute. All right, we have 5 seconds, so we're winding down our conversation, returning back to the space. Any brave soul out there want to pop their hand up in popcorn style? Just let me know. What was this experience like? Was it something? Yes.
Yes, ma'am. I'm discussing with my partner here. It's so easy to do. Yeah. I felt we both agree. We feel real relaxed, and I just looked at her and said, "Why don't we do this?"
Exactly.
It's so simple.
Yes, it's so easy to do, the participant was saying.
No,
Go ahead.
I'm just saying I was doing this with my partner here, and I said to her, as we looked at her, and I said, "I feel relaxed." She said the same thing, and I said, "It's so easy. It took a second or two."
Seconds.
And we don't, why is it that we don't do this? It only takes throughout the day.
Amen. Yes,
and
yes,
it's very
yes.
relaxing.
Yes, we are regulating our bodies. Exactly. Thank you. Thank you so much for bringing that. And thank you for sharing. Exactly. There are tools that we have that we don't use. And it only takes moments. It only takes moments to transform the ways in which we show up and experience our life. And so hopefully our gift to you is to remember that it does not take a long time, and it's not something complicated. It's very simple, in fact. It's very simple, although there's a lot of complexity around the research, but these are things that we can do. Yes, thank you. All right, got to stay on track. Thank you so much for sharing. So this is check-in time. Check-in time. So of the 3 tools presented so far, which one are you pulled towards? So let's review. 3 tools. What's the first one? Reset. Which O is it? Observe, yes, because we want to be aware. And then once we're aware, because part of that observing is we can't skip over lamenting. We can't skip over how we're feeling and what's really going on and move too quickly to joy. Too quickly to gratitude, right? It's part of the process, but we also do need to recognize where we are. So reset, observe, and orient ourselves. So how many of you, just by show of hands, feel more pulled to orienting yourself? Raise your hand. All right, we have some orienters in the room. Okay. How many of you are pulled towards observation, being more aware of how you're experiencing life? Okay, we got some observers. What about reset? Reset, yes, yes, yes. I think of all the tools, I'm a resetter. I'm constantly resetting because I can get so busy or excited or caught up in whatever I'm doing that I need to remind myself to slow down, to reset myself. And then because I practice these things together, then the chain of events just continue to go. I go from reset to observe to orient to our next tool, which is talking. And so now, just to kind of say that I know that some of us feel like we're more internal, folks who like, what is the word for folks who are like internal? Introverts, there we go. Thank you, Jordan. Yes, I know clearly I am not that word. I know that there are folks who are introverted, and so you need your alone time to re-energize and to do all the things, and that's important. But you too need the group of people. You need your people, be it 2, 3, 4. You need your people that you can be completely honest and open and transparent with. You need your people who also can be calling on you in my community, saying, checking on you in terms of what is or is not going right, what they see and what they're observing, right? You need that opportunity to have those folks in your life. All the literature points to the power of having a strong supportive network in terms of buffering against any of the mental health concerns that we have, all of the physical health concerns that we have, the power of community. I know we often hear that as buzzwords, but people, it's real. Just as simple as the compassion holds are, being engaged, being held in community is healing. There's a reason why God set us in families and set us in churches and set us together. There's a reason why we should not forsake the fellowship. There's a reason. He knows that when we are in family, when we are connected, there is powerful ways in which we are transformed. So, what are some of the virtues and values of talking to others? It reduces feelings of isolation. It offers perspective. Just as we were in here, right? Raising hands about, oh, I need this. Oh, I feel this. What did it help to foster? It helped to foster community. It helped to foster that I'm not alone in this, that there's someone else who may be experiencing this. And it offers other perspectives. There's only so much I could see without turning my head. And even when I do turn my head, I can't see behind me. But there's other people who have perspectives that are behind me and around me that then can help me, just as our perspectives can be beneficial for others. It also allows us to practice emotional release and stress relief. When we're talking, it could be through humor, it could be through lament. There's something powerful about being together. So we cannot forsake that. So it enhances well-being, it supports our development. This is all the research stuff. You guys can go through it. I want to get to the doing of it. Empowerment through connection, especially when I'm talking to African-American women and high achieving women who typically are the one, I don't know, it happens in other spaces and with other ethnic identities as well, but you can find yourself as being the only one or one of two in a particular space for the majority of your day. And how that can be very overwhelming. That could be a serious stressor. If you think about even being a missionary in another place and things are so unfamiliar, and it's not that we're not grateful and appreciate and feel the calling to be in those spaces, but that can take a toll. And we don't often recognize that or do things that help to mitigate. So, talking to others do. So, one of the things I like to teach people, and this may be a little funny in some contexts, but it's the yay, the oops, and the blah. And I probably the other ones you probably all get, but that one sometimes, depending on what context I'm in, you don't get. So that one is just simply giving you a script, especially for our introverts who's like, I don't know what to say. What am I going to tell the person? Well, you can talk about something that happened well, yay, something that went well in your day. Or you can talk about, oops, something that just did not go right. I can't believe I did that. Did I say that? Oh my goodness. And because sometimes, and we're going to get to it in disrupting, but sometimes we can play these narratives over and over and over and ruminate on them over. And is that helping our stress or enhancing it? Enhancing it. It's increasing it. So being able to verbalize that, and someone can say like, oh my goodness, that wasn't not in a minimizing way, but they're like, oh my goodness, that was funny, or oh, we all laugh, but it's okay. It helps to normalize it. So that is not this thing that keeps being replayed that gets you in the stress response. And the blah was like, sometimes we have those opportunities to just say, it was what it was. But even being able to talk to somebody about that, right? What we're going to do today is, well, we've been doing it. We've been talking to each other as part of this interactive piece of the workshop. But I want you, maybe in the context of thinking about our time here at the lecture series, what has been a high for you? Or a low. You can choose. We're not going to have time to do both. We only have 1 minute, so that's roughly 30 seconds each, unless you go fast. But just a high and a low, just to practice. Just to practice. So turn to your neighbor or your little group and just do a high or low real quick. Right. I'm sure we can go on and on and on about the highs and the lows. This is really just another opportunity to get you all talking, to get you all making conversation around these. Someone asked before what the T is. What's the T? That's like really just saying like, what's up? What's going on? So just kind of catching people up on your day. All right, so we have resetting, we have observe, and then we have, and then finally we have talk. So that's 4 of the 6. So up next, root, yes. So rooted, but we at root, y'all. We at root. So we're going to get rooted. All right, are you ready? All right, let's do it.
Hello, everybody. How y'all doing? I'm calling response as well, so when I'm engaged with you. So again, hello, how are y'all doing? Thank you. So again, my name is Jordan Rollerson, and I am a third-year PsyD student. Thank you, all my PsyDs. Previously, like Dinisha said, I was in Dr. Armstrong's lab, and now I'm in Dr. Ford's. And so we'll be talking about the E for today of the Living Rooted model, which is exercise. And so when we talk about exercise, there might be a variation of different feelings and emotions, thoughts and experiences. And so I'm not gonna have you do a boot camp or anything like that. It's okay. But ultimately, we just really wanna talk about the simplicity, but also the revolutionary aspect of exercising. And so this idea of leveraging power. When we're talking about leveraging power, we're able to talk about some of the things that we're already having now, or the tools that we have now, and just optimizing them, taking advantage of the simple but really revolutionary things that we can do to help promote wellness and well-being. So, let's hit the button. There we go. So some of the benefits of it it actually helps to lower symptoms of anxiety and depression. And so for all my mental health care professionals out there, some of the things that we'll advise people, or even just hospitals, will say, hey, make sure you're exercising, you get your water and things like that. But we just, again, want to stress the fact that these are some of the things that you can do at home. These are some of you can do in the chair at work. So, again, along with those, it also enhances our cognitive functioning as well. And so, one of the things that I like to do typically, especially before a big exam or anything like that, is ensure that I'm exercising. Simple because it also helps me get my mind off things, but it also just kind of helps me reset. And so physical activities such as strengthening the heart, reducing risk associated with stress-related different conditions. And so all these things that we know, everybody knows that it's good to what? Exercise, right? We know that. But sometimes we just don't do it. And that's okay. This is a no judgment zone. It's okay. But what we do want to say and actually do now is we're actually going to do some exercise. So I'm going to go, and we're going to start in our chair first. And so, similar to how we've been talking before, our first principle of our living rooted model is what? Reset. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear y'all. Reset. Oh, okay. I heard this side, but what about right here? Reset. Reset, and then what is it? Oh, okay. I like this side. All right. So, everybody go ahead and get a comfortable sitting position, feet flat on the floor, back flat on the chair. And we're just going to go ahead and take some deep breaths on the count of 3, and you're going to hold it for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Inhale. And blow out. One more. Inhale. All right. So now for this one, this is going to be just a simple neck roll or neck turning, sorry. And so as we are just starting from your down position, you're just going to start your head kind of down, and then you're going to slowly begin to roll your neck. Remember, as you're doing it, remember to breathe. Begin to roll your neck. See if you can notice any tension on the sides of your neck. And then once you went one way, I want you to go the opposite way, direction. Slowly, breathing. And now I want you to stop at your starting positions. And now we're just going to go with our chin to our shoulders, just looking. Just like this. Getting that stretch, hold it for about 3 seconds. Then come back to the middle. And then go to the other side. As you're doing it, you maybe even feel just a tug in your neck, in the back. One more time. All right, back to your center position. Now we're going to do just some shoulder shrugs, some shoulder rolls. So go backwards. Just like Dr. Armstrong was saying before, imagine breathing into those areas. These are some exercises that you can do right before you go to sleep, right when you wake up, when you're with a client or a church member, and they're saying some stuff, you're like, oh God. You have to breathe. It's just going to stay rooted in you, God. Stay rooted in you. All right. And so for our next one, if you're like me, I don't know, by show of hands, raise your hand if you, when we were doing the body scan, where were some of the places that you felt that tension? And you can just blurt it out. Shoulders, I see. Anybody else? Chest, back, lower back, or mid back? Which one? Mid back, all of those. Anybody else? Jaw, yes, all of those. So for this next one, similar to those body scans, what we are doing is really trying to help us be aware of where is that tension in our body, and then we're actually going to be intentional about addressing those things, because that's really exercise. What it really is being intentional about your whole being, not just your physical, but it's also your emotional, like we just learned about, and cognitive function as well. So for this next one, I want you to grab your hands together and clasp them, and then I want you to almost pull as if you're trying to reach out to something. Oh, I like that. She said, that's good. I like that. And then come back, release. Open that chest up again. Roll those shoulders. Turn that neck. And then roll. It should all be one little motion. So, we're going to go back to our clasping our hands. And then pull forward. Notice those shoulder blades. And then on that last one, I want you to open those fingers back up and breathe. And open up your chest. I know we're a little close compacted, but it's okay because we family. We family. We family. There we go. Just say, I'm imagining myself hugging you. That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing. All right. And so now we've been doing a lot of different exercises while we're sitting down. And that is great and wonderful. But also, God has blessed us. And if you don't, it's okay. God has blessed us to be able to stand at different times. And so what I want us to do, we're going to stand on the count of three. 1, 2, 3. Stand, stand. Now, this one is going to require just a little bit of space. And it's okay. Just spread out just a little bit, just a little bit. Now, I'm from the South, and if you know what that means, it means that we do a little bit of, we got a little dance a little bit, a little bit, you gotta get loose a little bit. So this is something that we're gonna do, and mind you, I want you to be very mindful of the space. You don't have to take large steps. It's just gonna be like a boom, boom, like that. So I'm actually not gonna give instructions for this, but I have already asked someone to do that for me. And so whenever we're ready, I want you to, in your best mind and in all this, right now we're family. We're not worrying about how we think and look and all that. We just actually worrying about our whole being. And so when this starts, everybody should know it. And if not, it's okay.
So, our final strategy for you all today is I'm loving the call and response. Y'all have caught on so well. Yes, disrupt. And what are we disrupting? We're disrupting that stinking thinking. How many of us have ever been engaged in stinking thinking? Yes. And sometimes it's so helpful to have community around us in order to shift that, to shift some of the negative self-talk that we can engage in, like I can't, or I shouldn't, or I can't believe, or all of those kind of things, or the limiting beliefs like, no, that's not for me. Well, why isn't it for you? So we're going to jump into it a little bit. So I love this quote. Be careful how you're talking to yourself because you are listening. Be careful how you're talking to yourself because you are listening. As a man speak or as a woman speak, so is he, so is she. What are you saying about yourself? What are you believing about yourself? Because we know when you're saying it, it impacts what you feel, and those feelings impact then how you behave, how you show up. But it starts with what are you saying to yourself? So, how do we improve our self-talk? What are some of the strategies that we utilize? First, it's simply becoming aware. A lot of times we may not be aware of the places that we are holding those negative beliefs. And for some of us, we only become aware of those when we're in therapy or we're in counseling or we're with a coach. And so those are all important types of interventions that we all can engage in at times. Sometimes we become aware of it when we're in community. Typically, we only become aware of it when we're in, yes, community. Also, we can challenge and reframe those negative thoughts, as well as using positive affirmations to help remind us who we are, who we belong to, what we can do, what we can accomplish. And also, there's ways in which we can visualize these strategies. So some of these strategies we're going to talk a little bit about. Some of you may know this verse. Finally, my sisters, my brothers, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable. If anything, if anything, anything, anything is excellent and praiseworthy, think about these things. The Bible challenges us to think about these things. Why? Because it's clear, and now we even know the research says it, right? What we're thinking about determines the course of where we will go and what we will do. Even more so sometimes than what we are doing. It's about what we're thinking about, how we're doing these things, right? It's the mind and body together that's guiding this. So, what are some things that we can do? Well, we can practice self-affirmations. We can catch the critic. I love this one. I use this one frequently. The critic is that inner voice that says, oh, you can't. Oh, you shouldn't. But nobody cares. That critic actually sometimes comes from a really good place, right? We don't always distinguish our threat systems, our danger systems, our warning, can't always distinguish between a physical threat, saber-toothed tiger walking into Travis Auditorium, and an emotional threat. But if I get out there and say something, what will other people say? What will they think? Our system is like, whoop, like a bodyguard, like, okay, I'm gonna protect you, Dr. Tina, so I'm gonna do whatever I can to get you not to do that thing, because it may ensue in some emotional uncomfortability. So that self-critic starts going, and what I could say is, oh, okay, I see that you're concerned, but guess what? It's okay. We're gonna be okay, and I'm gonna do it anyway. And then there's the, how does God see you? So all over my office, in my home office, on the back of the door, I have Post-its that have my favorite scriptures written out on them. And when I'm getting ready for my day, I'm standing in front of, my door is closed, right? Because I have 2 little kids. I have grown kids, but I have 2 little kids, so I got to close the door. But when I'm looking at the back of the door and I'm stretching, getting prepared for my day, I'm rehearsing these scriptures. What does it mean to rehearse scriptures? It means to look at this word of God and recognize that my image is there, that this is who I am. I'm not what the inner critic is saying. This word of God, that's who I am. So another one is to flip the script, right? That's kind of similar to what I was saying, is like negative thought. How do you rewrite that? What is a way to rewrite that? And then finally, stop the thought. Now, in mental health practices, we have thought stopping. Some of you may have heard of this. You have a rubber band, and anytime those negative thoughts come, it's just a gentle pull, right? Just to remind you, to snap you out of it, to wake you to what is happening and where you're at now. So with this particular one, the disrupting, we're not going to practice it today together. But in this context, but I want you to think of a scripture, even now, just for a moment, a scripture that you hold dear, a scripture that reminds you who you are. And if perchance one does not immediately come to mind, I would suggest some homework for you. Is to find one that resonates, to pray about, Lord, what is it that I need to know? What is it that I need to see that reflects how you see me? And how can I hold on to that? And be it you write it on a Post-it, be it you write it on your phone and have it in your notes. I mean, there's even apps now that you can set on your phone that will pop up and will remind you throughout the day who you are. So with that, we are going to go to our final section, which is being able to move towards just a few moments of Q&A in your wellness plan. So remember, your wellness plan is to identify an area that you are going to be committed to practicing. Let's review real quick. R is for? Reset. First O. Observe. Second O. Orient. Next letter. Talk, yes, root. So we're at root. What's the ED? Exercise. Get moving, folks. And disrupt negative thinking. Disrupt that stinking thinking. All right. So with that, we have 1 minute and 44 seconds. You guys want to join me? Any questions any burning questions? Because we always have more activities for you, but any burning questions? Yes, ma'am. I can.
My name is Nicole. So I work with kids, and a lot of the things that you suggest, I do try, and they're like, I don't like to breathe. Like that doesn't help. What would you suggest for kids?
Oh, yes. Breath and kids, bubbles are one of the easiest things to do that they absolutely love. I even do that with adults. Also, blowing bubbles with gum. Also, just really engaging with humming. Sometimes they like humming different songs. That helps to get that same stimulation, that same kind of movement too. That helps with the, what's the word? They're good. They already know what I'm thinking. The whole regulation. Yes, yes. So does that help?
Yes.
Great. Absolutely. Yes, yes, ma'am. Can you grab the mic just so that the folks, or if you say it really loud, I'll repeat it. I just want to make sure they can hear you.
Can you give some examples of lamenting?
Oh, yes, examples of lamenting. Absolutely. So how that looks, how we do it as a group. So we're usually, do you want to talk about it? You got it. Okay. So how we do it at the retreat, we break out into small groups. And then I have a script that everybody uses. And in that script, each person takes a line of the lament and they just fill it in. Dear God, and then they talk about what the lament is. When this happened, they fill it in. I felt so, and then they alone, scared, nervous. Do you care? Do you care that this thing happened? Do you care, God, that this happened to me? Do you? And then they insert what these things are. And then there is a point where they really can rage and rail against what happened, and they list all those things. And then at the end we say, and God, we know that you hear and that you care. And I'm telling you, that piece right there is like a couple of hours. And that doesn't even do it justice. That could be a whole day, and we can break it into sections as well. But it is amazing to see these women for the first time being able to share parts of their stories that they've never been able to share within their faith communities because they felt as though they could not share these things, or to share these things would somehow go against their faith, as Dr. Rojas Flores was talking about, that triumphant faith. But recognizing that all of these experiences are cared for by our Heavenly Father. Yeah. Thank you for that question. Yes, in the back. Yes. Yes, for observe, do I recommend any other techniques? I think for observation, it's important that the two ways I think about it, it's important to do some internal observation as well as external. So things that are going to help you to be self-aware and self-reflective. Those are the techniques that I would inquire about, and sometimes, or that I would practice. The inquiring part is sometimes we're not very reliable. We don't always accurately discern where we're at, right? So that's why we also do that in the context of community. So we can start with us, but then also there are people who know us, who see us, who love us, and have a viewpoint, who can also give us feedback. So I would encourage all of us to think about who are those people that we trust that can also see us and give us feedback as they observe us.
Thank you.
Sure. All right. So with that, we are finished.